Hello, I'm attorney Lewis Haskell, and I've been very pleased so far this tax season to see the impact that the so-called no tax on overtime has had upon my clients. I say that I'm pleased because I spent kind of the last two tax seasons having my clients tell me that their incomes are down because there is no overtime to be had. So to see that it's had such an impact for so many people was a bit of a surprise and quite a pleasant one at that. No tax on overtime is quite important for folks who do work it. I say so-called because there's a little confusion here that I want to clear up. Sometimes when people collect overtime, they get time and a half. Sometimes they get double time. And in this case, it matters. Of course, it matters to the person receiving it anyway, but at tax time, it really matters because what's not taxed is the time and a half or the double in double time. So the straight time still gets taxed. So if somebody's making $20 an hour and they're paid time and a half, that $10 premium, that half, is what does not get taxed. Now, one problem that we've been having this year is some employers have been kind and they have put the overtime premium on the W-2 forms, and some have not. And so it is important, if you know that you worked overtime last year, to check your W-2 form. Typically, it'll be in box 14, but it can be in a lot of places. But if it's within the body of the form, it'll be box 14. ADP forms, for example, will have something kind of separate and apart from the form itself, where they kind of go through where these numbers came from, and there they may have added in something for overtime. But if it's not there, then kind of the burden is on you to figure out what it is. And the best way to do that is to look at your last 2025 pay stub at the year-to-date numbers. One would hope that would be there. In most cases, I did have one client who had to dig deeper into his payroll records, and there it was for me. And in fact, that one was interesting because that client had his total overtime wages for the year were 33,330, which means that, and it was all time and a half, meaning that the half in time and a half was a very easy to calculate 11,110. But think about what a difference that would make on his tax return. And by the way, for most people earning overtime, the restrictions are not so important. And here's what I mean. Most people are capped, well, all individuals are capped at $12,500 of overtime premium per year. So if you have a married couple, each one is individually capped at $12,500 per year. We have seen some very large overtime premiums. That $12,500 cap, unfortunately, unfortunately for my clients, has not been a big issue. The other, it's kind of a funny way to look at things. You probably, tax time, you only get to write off the 12,500. But wouldn't it be nice to have $50,000 of overtime premium if you're physically able and want it? The other issue that comes up very seldom for overtime workers is that there is a phase out. For single people, that phase out begins at $150,000. That includes head of households. For married filing joint, the phase out begins at $300,000, but it's a very slow phase out. So, for example, a married couple making with a combined income of $500,000 a year is still going to get a little bit of a break on no tax on overtime. Ditto for a single person making, say, 250, because it goes to zero at 275 for a single person, 550,000 for a married couple. So it's kind of a nice thing for people. And one of the interesting things for 2025, so it makes me look good this year, not so good next year, is that while the tax law changed in 2025, the withholding schedules did not. So people had full withholding on their 2025 overtime, even though they're not getting taxed on it. So obviously next year, when the withholding adjusts, it's going to bring down refunds. In both cases, it reduces the amount of tax paid, but it'll bring down the refunds in two ways. One is you're not being withheld against that overtime, whereas this year you were. And the other is, of course, overtime always makes me look good at tax time because it tends to goose up the refund, because the way the tax tables work, payroll companies tend to over withhold on overtime because the way the tax tables work, it's just assumed that this is what you make every pay period. And thus they withhold against you as if that's going to multiply that by the number of pay periods, and that's going to be your annual income, and that's going to be your tax bracket. And then at tax time, they get back into their regular tax bracket, and the difference gets refunded. So it's been a lot of fun this year. I've had a lot of clients get noticeably larger refunds because of the no tax on overtime. Next year, they're just going to pay less tax, but the refunds won't be quite as much fun. Still, good for them. Less to the government, more in their paychecks. So looking forward to seeing all of you. And as I say, if it's not on your W-2, please come in prepared to tell me the number so that I can just enter it into software and get you your refund quickly. Thank you.